Our records constitute about 32,000 pages currently. We're adding new records each week and hoping to speed up the process at which we're adding records. By contrast, the Woodrow Wilson Center's Cold War International History Project has about 10,000 pages of records and has been in existence for about 15 years. And of course, that's an invaluable thing for historians. I'm not saying this to belittle them. What I'm saying is that in a very short period of time, we've created a really remarkable database, and it's only going to grow over time. A few clarifications on our holdings are certainly in order. First, we have no actual original records in our database. We only have digital copies of captured state records. There are no cultural artifacts in our database. You won't find the Jewish archives, for instance, or those records at our center. A lot of this stuff has gotten a lot of news in the past and led to a lot of confusion. But in our center, it's merely digital copies of captured state records in the case of Iraq or captured terrorist records in the case of Al-Qaeda. Furthermore, we have no connections to other collections of captured records from Iraq. Such collections exist at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. There's a large collection there, I believe 5 to 7 million pages of Ba'ath Party records that were seized in 2003 from the Ba'ath Party headquarters in Baghdad. Also a collection at the University of Colorado where they have records that were captured by Kurdish forces in 1991, but were entirely distinct from those two collections. While various officials, State Department officials and Iraqi representatives have met to discuss potential return of the original records, and there are press reports on this from back in May that describe these negotiations as fruitful and constructive. The CRC has absolutely no role in these discussions. No one solicited our input or advice, nor have we given it. And presumably, if and when the originals are returned, the digital copies of the digital copies which we have at our center would remain, just as the digital copies have remained from previous wars, from the Confederate forces, from the War of 1812, World War II, and so forth, all at the National Archives. In terms of process, how we function, CRC staff accesses a restricted U.S. government database, which has the collection of the captured records captured by U.S. forces in '03. And then we go through that with various filters in mind to screen, based on national security and humanitarian considerations, records for potential inclusion into the CRC database. In 2006, some of you might recall, there was an effort to release a massive amount of documents online. About 11,000 records went online, and they were insufficiently vetted. The New York Times very quickly found a crude design for a nuclear trigger device, and the collection went offline immediately. By the way, I've been told there's a lot more than that went out online. For instance, I've been told, I haven't seen it, a report on a rape victim during the occupation of Kuwait who complained that she'd been raped by Iraqi forces and then was raped again. It had her name and all of that information. This is the type of thing, there's no place for this online. And there need to be humanitarian considerations that will protect this type of information. And there were other types of information like this that were released online that never should have been. As well as the national security considerations. You know, we're not going to put a how-to manual on building a bioweapon in our database. It's as clear as that. So I'll talk a few of the filters that we use. We prohibit scientific technical data from entering the center. We're working on definitions on what exactly that may or may not include. But we don't put scientific technical data in our center. We don't put records in that primarily contain personally identifiable information. And I'll talk about what that means in just a minute. That could include a list of private Iraqis and their salaries. It could include, just things like that. They're equivalent of social security numbers and that type of information. Also, there are date restrictions. We don't put records in that are dated after April 9th of 2003 from Saddam's Iraq. So documents that were captured, that originated from the occupation period at this time do not enter our center. Similarly with Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, I believe the date for that is January 1st of '03. I'm pretty sure that's the date for that collection. But for the moment at least, we're only putting records in from beforehand. And there are plenty of records to work with, so we'll stay very busy with this for some time. In terms of conducting research at the CRRC, researchers can take notes. However, at the moment, you're not allowed to remove entire documents. Researchers' papers are not subject to pre-publication review, which as a government employee is an awful nice benefit for you guys. Anything I write is subject to that, but for you guys, you can write whatever you want as long as you protect personally identifiable information. And there are various steps to ensure that you do protect that. Namely, we require you to have an institutional review board approval from your home institution. Now, historians aren't super familiar with IRBs and normally aren't required to do them. We recognize this. It's a lot more common for psychologists and others. However, because there are human subjects who could be harmed by improper release of data, we do require you to sign a form and an agreement with your IRB board at your home university in which you promise to protect this type of information in certain ways. And it's an agreement between you and them, not between us. We just require the agreement. I can talk with you a lot more about this later, but essentially it's to protect non-public officials who aren't acting in their official capacities. And generally speaking, it wouldn't apply to the deceased. So you could say, essentially, I think anything you wanted on Saddam Hussein. He's dead and he wasn't acting in his official capacity in all of these records. But the standard would be quite different, as you might imagine, in various other categories. A few other things that I wanted to touch on really briefly before closing is just the nature of the competing imperatives that we face as a center. As I mentioned to begin with, we have these different communities that we're trying to satisfy, and you guys are one of them. And I feel very strongly that we need to satisfy all three: academics, the national security community, and humanitarian considerations. We need to satisfy all three categories, and there will be some trade-offs. Different people will see things differently about how these trade-offs should be made. I'm very interested in hearing your perspectives and incorporating them. National security needs to drive this effort and also place some limited restrictions on its scope. And the concepts of academic freedom and openness are going to be challenged, and we welcome these discussions. We look forward to participating in them. I look forward to talking with you in the future about how we can help you with your research. Thank you.